stars is falling. It's you, must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. It's I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. But when ye come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I well may be.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to commence our service. Could I ask that you take this moment to make sure your phones are turned off or flicked across onto aeroplane mode? We're starting our service today a little differently, a true tribute to Lyall from his family. We have some very able musicians and some very able singers that are going to start our service today with Leaving on a Jet Plane, and I believe you all have a little slip of paper with the chorus, so there are no excuses for not joining in halfway through. Oh no, that's okay. Come on. Oh, can we get set up? Yes, get set up. Let's get ready. Yes, it's time to start. Well, you did that. Yes, yes. You've got this paper. See, I'm not making stuff up. Yes, that's it. We're starting.
So before we do start, I just want to talk about the significance of this song. So it was, I guess, inspired by my cousin Jane, who put out a record some time back and was in a band, I think, called Folklore, Jane? And Leaving on a Jet Plane is one of the songs that she used to play. And we learnt it. It was one of the first songs I learnt on the guitar. And it became very significant to my father because he would always say, get that guitar out, play me Leaving on a Jet Plane. And so it just became a song that the family played all the time. Now, I just want to reiterate before I start that the song is actually not about Dad. If you read the words, they're actually pretty terrible. And I don't know that Dad really knew the words. He just loved to hear us sing, and he was always delighted with anything we did. So we're going to give it a bit of a crack. I'll do the best I can because I'm a bit rusty. But my children are going to give me a bit of help.
And I'm going to lip sync.
Oh, I didn't get perfect.
Justine got all of that.
Yes, just as long as I can see it. And so please feel free to join in on the chorus.
And Dad, we know you can hear us.
And if I make a mistake, I know he won't mind.
All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. Standing here outside your door, hate to wake you up to say goodbye. But the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. Tax is waiting, he's blowing his I'll sing for you. When I come back, I'll bring your Lord and ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. Now the time has come for me to leave you. One more time, let me kiss you. And close your eyes and I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the times that I won't have to stay. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go.
Well done, and what a perfect way to start. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. Well, welcome each of you to this service that honours a wonderful life, 91 amazing years. And because this is a service for Lyall Abell, I'm going to ask you all to sit up straight, stop talking, and keep your hands to yourself. If you start chatting, I will separate you, and there is a naughty corner. So, today's service we want to be uplifting and wonderful because that is how this extraordinary man lived his life. All of you have been lucky enough to be part of those 91 years. At some point, each of you have walked beside him and gathered memories. Perhaps you didn't even realise you were doing it, because when we reach this day, to those who miss him, your memories, they are so precious. Thank you all for being here to surround family with love and strength and comfort and support. But I know there are also people watching on our live stream. Hello, whether you're watching from near or far. We know you're there. We can feel you filling these last few seats, and my wish is that you feel like you have been part of today. Little sisters always know the dirt. They know all the little secrets from when he wasn't 91. And so to give you a little glimpse into his life, I'd like to ask his sister Beth to come on up. Thank you, Beth.
Our mother always said that Lyall was a happy, sunny baby who brought much joy to her life. And as he grew, that remained his true nature. He was a really lovely man. He was kind and considerate. As his kid sister, I adored him, and I'd tag along with him whenever I got the chance. I remember us walking down the hill to the farm for milk. On the climb back up, he'd always stop at the halfway point and drink from the billy can, which of course was prohibited. It was my job to make sure no telltale milk moustache was left behind. Even when he had friends around, I was always welcome, and I was never made to feel the nuisance that I'm quite sure I was. He was generous. His teaching career started out west, and when he was due home for the school holidays, it was a red letter day for our family, especially me. He'd always bring me the loose change that he'd saved up throughout the term. Back in those days, of course, it was halfpennies and pennies with a few threepences thrown in as a surprise. How I looked forward to those riches. Lyall could never remember the exact date of my birthday. He knew it was in June, so over the years, he'd call in on a day during that month to wish me a happy birthday. He never came empty-handed, always laden down with treats to eat. You know, he never did manage to hit on that right day, not even once. In recent years, we've been playing cards together regularly, and it was Lyall who kept us in supplies of wine and laughter. He was a positive person and fun to be with. My boys, having no father, were delighted to have a blood uncle who made it possible for our children to spend many happy times together. Whether it was playing in their pool or making lots of noise to see the new year in at our place, he did love a joke. He used to say that living in a home with 4 females meant that he never found the toilet seat up. Right until his last days, he never complained. Instead, my wonderful brother would have an amusing quip to lighten the mood and make us all feel better. You just had to admire him. Above all, Lyall had a great capacity for love and loyalty. I never heard him speak a harsh word about anyone. He was devoted to his family. I loved him dearly and will miss him terribly. So will many others, because, as I said in the beginning, he was simply a lovely, lovely man.
Beth, that was just beautiful. Beautifully done, and what wonderful, eloquent words to pay tribute to him. Next, both of his girls want to say a little something, and firstly I'd like to ask Romaine and his son-in-law Scott to come on up. Thanks, guys. Well, she's bringing security, so...
I'm one of the few people in the family who's not a teacher, but I needed a little prop. As most of you know, Justine and I had the most amazing last few weeks with our dad. We wanted to honour his wish to die at home, and we got it down to, I think, about the last 12 hours. And I'll talk more about that, but I've been blessed to be able to see Dad every month, and once we got the diagnosis, we've spent so much time together, but caring for somebody as they're dying, and I suppose now that we're middle-aged women, we got to ask Dad some amazing questions that he could now tell us the answers to. We got to hear some amazing stories, and I got to spend many times during those days just on the floor in front of him in his chair, and I'd ask him stuff, I'd share stuff, I'd cry, he'd pat my hair, and that is the most beautiful way to start grieving. Dad. So, all right, so I'm a little bit shaky, but I'll read what I can. So some of you here know that I have a passion for palindromes. And I said to Dad before he died, thank you so much for giving me another palindrome. So 32 to 23. So what an awesome palindrome he's left me with. Because he was born in 1932 and died obviously this year. He lived a life as enduring as the Sydney Harbour Bridge, as steadfast as R.M. Williams, and as timeless as the ABC, all of which share Dad's birth year. Dad witnessed the growth and transformation of our great nation, always holding on to traditional values and principles. Dad was a testament to the enduring spirit of Australia, a true believer in conservative ideals, and a pillar of strength for his family and teaching colleagues. His legacy will continue to inspire us to uphold the values that have made the country. And Justine's going to talk more about the Lyall Abell Memorial Trust, which Dad will continue to live on through. In the last few years, I joined a book club in Adelaide with a bunch of great, intellectual, fun, amazing women. And Dad actually became my book club coach. So we remember back when we did the HSC and you had those crib notes about the books. So Dad was my living version of that. So it started a tradition for us where I would always buy 2 copies of each book and I'd post a book to Dad. Dad would quickly read the book and send me text messages on his take, opinion and view, more often than not providing a spiritual insight into the plot and characters that I could never have seen on my own. Spoiler alert, the problem is Dad was an avid reader, so he would read much faster and he'd often finish the book well ahead of me. So his texts became spoilers. But once the ladies in my book club became aware of this, he was made an honorary member. And so for me, we would print off all his text messages and they would be the notes I take to book club. Dad was amazing. He was such a clever man. Before I started school, I was babysat by Mrs. Borman and also Grandma Hunter. And before going to work, Dad would dress me and we'd play Jack Frost. And I could never understand how Jack Frost never got into my bedroom. So we'd start by, Jack Frost, he's in Ewing Street, he's coming down the street. And Dad would start to dress me. And Jack Frost never actually made it into the bedroom before I was always dressed. And I could never understand why that happened or how it could happen. As a teacher, we know Dad was a great teacher, but not only in his chosen career, but as a dad. He was patient, generous with his time. Dad taught me to swim, to garden, to concrete, and to drive. Dad could explain things so I could understand. He taught me algebra, accounting, cost-benefit analysis, statistics, and supply and demand curves. I only passed second year economics at uni because of the cramming that Dad and I did at the kitchen bench the morning of my exam. Dad was also so self-sacrificing. Dad went without so much to ensure Mum and the 3 of us had what we wanted and even what we didn't know we needed. Even in his last 24 hours, with his focus on Justine and I, he changed his wish to die at home to going into hospital, where at 4 a.m. he was in the company of a lovely nurse engaged in conversation when he took his last breath. He wasn't alone and he was happy, and he was even joking with the nurse. Knowing Dad, he wanted to spare us from the efforts of looking after him to the very last breath. And whenever we said, "How are you?" he'd say, "Don't worry, pet, I'm okay." Between my years of 5 and 12, Mum studied part-time while working. We made many trips to Armidale because Mum studied through UNE. While Mum would go to her in-service courses, Dad would look after us. And we didn't have very much money, so Dad would keep us entertained. He taught us how to make quick cakes. We would go rabbit spotting and walk through paddocks. And at the time, I used to hate the green soup that he'd make, but I now understand that that's what kept us alive every winter, and I now love pea and ham soup. Wise counsel. Dad was always available for advice. If something ever happened in our family, we would always go to Dad first before telling Mum, and Dad then would help us navigate the next steps. One time, when I was a bit younger, I was very, very worried. So I went to Dad with this big worry. I'd continued to play with dolls for a long time. They were all packed up, but I would sneak them out when no one was watching, and I was concerned that I was getting too old to play with dolls, yet still liked playing with them. He told me it was okay to play with them until I didn't need to. He said one day I'd just forget to play with dolls. And it just happened. Maybe that was because I became interested in boys, but anyway. And that's not actually the reason why Judy's with us today. So the other part of Dad's wise counsel was he became a barometer, and before finding the love of my life, I did have a few other relationships, but they'd get to a point and I'd say, would Dad do that? Would Dad say that? And I go, no, over. The reason why Judy's actually here, and you'll note that Dad tried very hard to do some surgery. Dad could fix anything. He could plumb, he could do electrical work, he could concrete, he could paint. He couldn't fix Judy's arm. But the last moment with Dad, Justine and I were in the hospital room and we were helping him on with his pyjama coat, and we were on each side of the bed and probably we were working at odds. And then he just said, I now know how Judy feels. No wonder her arm came off. Anyway, so my lovely, beautiful Dad, last week I lost you, but I've been reunited with my extended family. In the last few years, Dad reconnected with his sisters Murray and Beth. He'd play cards with them each month and spending more time with his family and friends. And I thank you to the Abell Walsh clan who, have Dad's values, and that's where he got them from. He would just go out of his way to help anybody. I'll just be a sounding board. So I miss you, Dad. Book club won't be the same without you, but I'm a better person for having you as my dad. That's something Dad would do. Glasses? Oh. That's not something Dad would do.
When the family met with today's celebrant, Carolyn, to discuss the service, she asked us how we would describe Lyall. She wanted to get a feel for how Lyall was. I offered up 3 values that I thought really epitomised Lyall. But his sister Beth, her partner Brian, Justine and Romaine were soon adding so many more words that described Lyall in the most positive light. Loyal, family orientated, traditional, loving, caring, kind, articulate, curious, frugal, adventurous, honest, self-sacrificing, witty and more, many, many more. I'm sure you'll agree that this gathering could come up with just a few more as well. A testament to Lyall is in the way in which he raised his beautiful, intelligent and articulate daughter Romaine. I'm a tad biased, sorry Justine. An acronym we come up with for judging the best way forward on any particular issue was WWLD. What would Lyall do? From whether it's how to open a car door for a lady, or how we should respond to criticism, or what way we should vote in a referendum, we would always ask ourselves that question. More often than not, Lyall's advice was the right outcome. As Romaine said, Lyall was a brilliant handyman. He thought he was going to be an engineer before getting a teaching scholarship, and went on to be an extremely well thought of teacher and principal. But we do all know that Lyall's passion was building and fixing stuff. 7 Ewing Street is the epitome of Lyall's creativity for fixing problems, creating new spaces, providing lighting to areas that may not even need it. And even after 14 years being with Romaine and visiting Ewing Street many, many times, I still don't know where all the light switches are. I also had the great pleasure of working with Lyall to build a new side gate at our home in Adelaide. His mind was always one step ahead and allowed us to get the gate built in record time. He even modified our furniture while we were out one day just to make it a bit more efficient. Despite a few disagreements with Lyall over the years, over his decision-making between the sisters, I've always felt a close personal bond. He welcomed me into the family without hesitation. When I first met Lyall, and knowing that Fiona, Justine and Romaine had all married and divorced to Stephen, I made sure I introduced myself to Lyall as Steve. And that whilst Romaine had already talked about my name being Scott, I said that she'd just done that to hide the shame. His face dropped, but then he saw my smile and he got the joke. Lyall had a wicked sense of humour, not often seen, but wicked nonetheless. And I'm proud to be remembered by Lyall as the favourite son-in-law, the one who could reverse a box trailer. The coming days, weeks and years are going to be extremely difficult for those who love Lyall. to realise he won't be there physically to guide or even cajole. Romaine certainly feels a huge emptiness, but was really glad to spend some quality time with Lyall in his last few years. She and Justine have provided 24-hour care for Lyall in the last few months, but have also gained insights into Lyall's psyche, having those tough conversations about death, love, relationships and politics. I really think that Lyall's legacy will be those values that I talked about at the beginning of my tribute. He was a true gentleman, for which I've been honoured to know.
Thank you both. The last few tributes from his daughter Justine. Well, I'm a bit scared of how many bits of paper she's got. We'll see how. And some grandkids are coming up. Come on, guys.
So I would like to thank you all for coming here today. It's wonderful to see so many people here, and I know that there are people watching the live stream as well. I look across here to the casket and there is a trophy here that was given to my father by the students at his school for the teacher who makes the longest speeches. So I've got a funny feeling I might inherit that. When I sat down to pull together my thoughts on my father, and I considered how I could possibly share with everyone today how wonderful Dad is, I just found it really difficult to express both the richness of my experiences of my father and also the depth of my feelings for what an incredible man, husband and father he actually was. So I know this is going to sound a bit school teachery, but if you turn to the back of your order of service, there's a series of little dot points there, and I'd just like to draw your attention to the very first bullet point, which I truly believe captures my father's essence. Dad was a scholar and a true gentleman in every sense of the word. There was nothing he didn't know, no topic he couldn't competently converse on, no situation he couldn't manage with incredible grace and style. Dad's final weeks on this earth, as my sister was saying, we got to spend a lot of time with him, and I actually said to him one day, "They broke the mould when they created you, Dad." And his typical reply was, "Thank you, pet, that's a lovely thing to say." He always called us pet. Dad was a very private and extremely humble man, always understated and often self-deprecating. Over the last few years, my father made time to routinely visit me every Friday afternoon or evening for a catch-up drink and to debrief about the week that was. We would talk shop, as teachers tend to do, and reflect on life's many anomalies. These were extremely precious moments that I savoured and treasured, and as time passed and Dad became less well, we chose to turn the focus of our discussions onto Dad's wishes for what we both termed Dad's last hurrah. Of course, leaving on a jet plane was definitely a part of that. Now, as I mentioned, Dad was quite a renowned orator, and whenever he presented to an audience, he was always extremely well prepared, and he structured his speeches around a particular theme or focus. So my focus for my speech to you today is simple. This presentation is all about the incredible man my father was, and of course, during our Friday night catch-ups, he gave me some subsections to put into my speech. And these were, and I'll just share them with you now, the orchard years, the academic years, the family years, the grandchildren years, and the future years. So I'm not going to stop and tell you when those next little bits are, but I'm just going to work through, and I think you'll figure it out for yourself. And I hope I get most of this covered. Dad was born in Wallsend on the 25th of April 1932 as the second child of three and the only son to Elijah and Muriel Abell. He was a devoted brother to his older sister Mari and younger sister Beth, both of whom he adored throughout his life until the day he departed. Dad grew up with the love and support of the extended Walsh family on their farm, where he often spoke fondly of his memories living with his many uncles and aunties, and I believe there were about 9 in total. They were housed in the row of dwellings across the ridge at Cardiff Heights. above the land owned by the Walsh family in Wimbledon Grove. Dad talked about helping his family pick fruit from the orchards, seeing his mother boil, stew and bottle the fruit, and he particularly talked about how his uncles would fight over who got to milk the cow, just not because they wanted to, because they didn't want to, and how he was tasked with carrying the pail of milk up the hill. And Beth shared with you what her responsibility was, not to tell anyone. However, Dad shared that his mother became quite perplexed with the lack of milk the cow was producing. So met him halfway down the hill one day and actually solved that mystery and caught him drinking from the pail. In fitting with the Walsh family values, of course, Dad was never scolded. And Dad did love his milk, and his love of milk stayed with him throughout his life. Dad recalled attending Mass each Sunday, and it was there he learned to fear that he may well end up in hell if he did the wrong thing. He sought counsel from his grandmother about this enduring worry of ending up in hell. Grandma Walsh reassured our father with her loving response, "Lyall, God is too good to create a place like hell," which Dad said resulted in him eventually choosing to roll over and go back to sleep on a Sunday rather than attend Mass. Dad mentioned the Irish influence in his family through songs such as Tooralura Lura, Danny Boy and Molly Malone. He recalled his grandfather would often whistle Two Little Girls in Blue, and his father would play the piano and play Daisy for weekend sing-alongs. I'm hoping that you might recognise some of those songs in the playlist later today when we're all together. Dad also spoke of his family's strong commitment to each other in terms of unconditional love and support, qualities he certainly instilled in us. He had great admiration for his parents and strove to emulate his own father, who was a pattern maker and worked for the BHP. Dad's father was able to turn his hand to woodwork, plumbing, electrical work, and could fix anything. And these were all skills that Dad learnt from his father and regularly drew upon throughout his life, as Scott shared in his speech, both in the family home and eventually in our separate homes. Dad loved the bush during his young years and would spend enormous amounts of time outdoors, wandering through the bush, sometimes trapping birds and keeping them in the aviary that his father built for him. He eventually joined a bushwalking club and really enjoyed bushwalking with friends. I know he embarked on a trip around Tasmania, and I think there might be a photo in the photo show of him sitting in the mountains, just with snow at his feet, wearing shorts. My boys do that too. Dad attended New Lambton Public School in his formative years, a school I am now blessed with the honour and privilege to be leading. In 1942, during the Second World War, the radar branch of the Australian Air Force took over New Lambton Public School, and all the currently enrolled students were forced out of the school and told to enrol in surrounding schools. Dad was 10 at the time. Dad was sent to finish his last 2 years of primary school at Cardiff Public School, where he had to make new friends and learn how to tow a different shaped football. I believe this experience definitely strengthened Dad's character, and Dad was the only student in his cohort to be recommended to attend Newcastle Boys High School, which is then an academically selective school. Dad was inspired by the deeply entrenched tradition and clear culture of high expectations established by Newcastle Boys High School. He wandered the school corridors and admired the photos of the academic gown-clad people adorning the walls, and he shared with me that he asked his father how he could achieve what he'd seen in those photos. His father told him that he would have to go to university if he wanted to wear an academic gown, so that then became Dad's ambition. Our father was inspired during his years at Newcastle Boys High to achieve sporting prowess and the position of prefect and captain. In his senior years, Dad did become a school prefect. He also attained the position of captain of Hunter Sporting House, and as a talented soccer player, he was comfortably positioned among the first 11. Upon leaving school, Dad was offered a scholarship to attend Teachers College. Back in 1948, this was an extremely prestigious and very financially supportive opportunity, which Dad readily accepted. He was an entrant into the pioneer year for the Newcastle Teachers College in 1949, and I believe that this is where our father's love for educating flourished. Dad was very social and readily took part in the college theatrical performances, which is where he developed a love for Gilbert and Sullivan productions. Dad was never one to take on a leading role and would support from backstage, or on occasion we would take a secondary part in the cast. He is an Englishman and I am called Buttercup are two songs from HMS Pinafore, the production that Dad was associated with during his college years, and he would often make reference to and attempt to sing these songs and I'm hoping that you might also pick those up on the playlist later today. Dad graduated with his teaching qualifications in 1950, and from there he forged a strong connection to public education. His very first teaching appointment was out at West Wyalong Public School, where he was assigned a class of 48 students, ranging in age from kindergarten to year 6. Now, I can tell you now, if I assigned a teacher to a class like that today, Federation would be all over me. Clearly, primary school routines and protocols were very different back then. And after each break, when the children went out to play, you had to mark the roll to make sure that they all came back to class and no one had absconded. So on one particular day, Dad shared with me that his class was one head short. So he set the class to work and he went out looking for the child that was missing. And he found this sad and very little embarrassed boy who hadn't quite made it to the toilet on time. So Dad reassured him, found a pair of his old football shorts, pulled them up on this child, they were literally up under the armpits just about, took his belt off and pulled the shorts in around the child's waist, and then sent the child home early so he didn't have to suffer the embarrassment of going back to class. The thing that I thought was really lovely was that the next day when the boy returned to school with Dad's football shorts washed and ironed within an inch of their life, accompanied with a letter of thanks from the child's mother and some baked goods. Dad's natural compassion and caring nature always stood him in good stead in the humanistic vocation which is teaching. The desire to achieve and succeed and the focus on lifelong learning, instilled in Dad from his early years of schooling, led Dad to achieve significant recognition throughout his teaching career. Dad completed his Masters in Educational Administration through the University of New England, graduating in 1977. Some of the promotion positions Dad held within the Department of Education include Social Sciences Faculty Head Teacher at West Wallsend High School, Deputy Principal at both Maitland Girls High School and later at Glendale Technology High School, a period of time as a District Inspector for the Department of Education, and Principal at both Cessnock High School and later at Waratah Technology High School, which was the original selective Newcastle Boys High School Dad attended as a student. Dad was very well known and admired amongst the teaching community, and I would regularly receive glowing feedback on his evidence-based practices and his innovative yet tempered leadership style. Dad met our mother Ina at a social dance at the Palais Royal, which sadly is no longer standing. It seems everyone met at the Palais back then. They married in Cooks Hill on the 24th of August 1957 and moved into our family home at 7 Ewing Street around 1960. Dad and Mum remained in that house together for the duration of their marriage, providing us with a degree of stability not often achieved when parents' vocations can lead to promotion away from home. Dad and Mum's first child, Fiona, arrived in 1962, followed by me in 1964, and then Romain in, am I allowed to say 1966? I just did. Dad was a very hands-on father. I recall him bathing us and singing us songs during this time, such as Yellow Submarine or Rub-a-Dub-Dub, Three Men in a Tub, and he would always weave our names into the songs just to keep us entertained. He would tell us stories of Jack Frost that remained shared and would always finish dressing us just in time. He read us bedtime stories, and one of which was Pearl Pinky and Sea Greenie, which I found, and it's out there on the table. You should look at it because inside the front of that book, it was actually gifted to Dad by his Auntie Mary when he was 6 years old. So it's quite an old book. Suffice to say, we've ruined it by colouring the pictures in with crayons very badly. He would tuck us in safely in bed at night, wake us up really gently every morning to start school, and the routine would start over again. I still recall the noise Dad make on cold mornings. He would clap his hands and then rub them. And we would hear that and we would know, right, it's a cold morning, we know we're going to get woken up, we've got to get up and go to school. And I can still hear that noise that he used to make with his hands. He'd make us breakfast, he'd pack our lunches, he'd send us safely off to school before getting himself to work. Dad's main focus was to support his wife by helping with the children, and he never once wavered in his commitment to our mother. Our parents formed friendships with a couple of families that had 3 girls similar ages to ours, the Hall family and the Widders family. We spent many social occasions with both of these families, including visiting for dinner, play dates, sharing extended caravanning trips during school vacation breaks, or reciprocal children's sleepovers. And these family-oriented events were just wonderful for forming great memories for us. As Beth said before, Dad was surrounded by women for most of his life, having 2 sisters and then, of course, 3 daughters of his own. As a result of the quality of his family upbringing, Dad embodied feminism and carried that fundamental focus of equality of rights and division of duties throughout his life, in his actions, in his interpersonal relationships, and in his leadership management. Dad was blessed with 3 wonderful grandchildren, and he could not have been more proud of each of them. I'm very aware they all have their own stories to share with you today. However, as their mother, I will choose to briefly brag on their behalves, as my father would have done if he were able. Dad's firstborn grandchild, Matthew, is an actor, graduated in 2015 from Actors Centre Australia, also lead singer in the band Flight to Dubai, and is currently studying criminal psychology through ACAP. Dad's second-born grandchild, Andrew, completed his Bachelor of Business Agriculture through Marcus Oldham College in 2021 and is now working on a large station in the southern area of the Northern Territory. And Dad's third-born grandchild, Charlotte, completed her Bachelor of Science through the University of Sydney, completed her honours degree as a scholarship recipient through UTS, and is currently completing her PhD through the Garvan Institute of Medical Research as a University of New South Wales scholarship recipient. Our father's focus on the importance of lifelong learning has clearly been carried through myself as Dad's daughter to Dad's 3 grandchildren, and their achievements have made him extremely proud. My children have been incredibly fortunate to have had their grandfather as such a significant figure in their lives for the best part of 30 years, and they've all formed a very close bond with him during that time. I'll leave it to my 3 children to share their more intimate memories of their grandfather with you all. So in closing, I cannot put into words how much I will miss my father moving forward. Our regular Friday night catch-ups together have now become one-sided conversations. Our occasional beers and Keno flutters together at the Blackbutt Hotel have now become fond memories, and our ponderings of the mysteries of the universe and Einstein's theory of relativity will now, for now, unfortunately remain unsolved. Dad, I thank you from the depths of my heart for all you did for me to support me throughout my life. You are and always will be my hero and my absolute rock, and I find it impossible to imagine life without you in it. Thank you for your unconditional love and support, for your non-judgmental advice, and for your willingness and ability to accept me wholeheartedly for who I am rather than who others thought I should be. In honour of the wonderful life you lived and to carry your legacy on, with support, I'm going to establish the Lyall Abell Memorial Award at our school in recognition of the children just like you who love and give back to the world the way you always did. I love you, Dad, and I will carry you with me in my heart forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mum. That was wonderful. I hope you don't mind. I was just already up here, you know. Thank you. So my grandfather, Lyall, in quite a female-dominated family, was one of the strongest male role models in my life growing up. A rational and very economical man. Grandad taught me all about value. Now, I think you've heard my mother refer to the way that our grandfather wrote speeches, and when he gave a speech, it was kind of centred around one common theme or motif, and value is what I'd like to talk about today. He taught me about the value of money, the value of a well-thought-out budget, always, and the value of a work ethic, which was a very common theme in his life. Never one to rush a story or a joke. Grandad knew the value of comedic timing and how an anecdote need flow. The value of family was very important to Grandad, and throughout his life he would drop everything at any point to help out any of his 3 daughters or any of us kids. Often with a DIY or budget solution that would work just as well as the official solution, but at a fraction of the cost, obviously. Grandad knew the value of a good education in both the present and the future, keeping the mind active in the here and now, as well as having something to show for your past work, a certificate showing your value to future employers. Grandad appreciated the value of literature, which then got passed down to my mother and then to me. Often quoting Clancy of the Overflow by Banjo Patterson, which was one he was particularly keen on, and books that he ended up actually passing on to me, such as Tom Sawyer, The Scarlet Pimpernel, Robinson Crusoe, etc. Grandad valued sentimentality. With friendly pet names and terms of endearment for his daughters that I always thought was very dear, calling them pet. And his collection of keepsakes from special gifts and occasions. My grandfather also taught me the value of good tools. And not just well-worn physical tools that he actually gifted to Drew and I recently, but lessons collected through life. Several that he drilled into me when I was a kid, particularly 7 3s being 21, and F equals MA that I just could not, for some reason, get my head around. But perhaps the most important thing that Grandad taught me to value is time. And not just the waste of time spent pulling one's pants up, which obviously you have no time to do while running errands and doing menial tasks around the house. It's 1 second that you cannot afford to lose, pulling trousers up. But in particular, time well spent. Throughout this year, I've been sending my grandfather essays that I've written, and he's taken the time to go through them with like a fine-tooth comb, giving me tips on how to make things more concise or how to structure certain paragraphs. And regardless of health concerns or time of day, he used this wealth of knowledge to help add value to my work, which is quite a worthy allegory for Grandad's life's work, constantly putting others first. Look, in conclusion, I hope that as we say goodbye to Grandad today, each of you can reflect on the value that he's added to your lives, as I know that we will be. Thank you.
So, Grandad was such a big part of our upbringing. And there isn't a stage of my life that I remember that he wasn't very invested in what I was doing and letting me know that he was my biggest supporter. We spent a lot of time with him growing up. I've been told that he and Grandma were the first to raise their hands whenever there was a baby-sitting opportunity. And when staying over at Grandma and Grandad's, we'd always be sure to get a healthy, hearty meal. Lamb's fry or Grandad's famous soup de loup, or any other arrangement of meat and 3 veg, usually featuring Grandad's overcooked broccoli, which I've since developed a taste for, unfortunately. Regardless of the meal, each of us ate every bite in hopes of getting our favourite dessert. Grandad didn't mind letting us have a little bowl of vanilla ice cream with some Milo on top. However, for some reason, he really did mind when we mix it up into a big paste before eating it. This he called stupid porridge, and we'd have to make it really quickly when he was looking the other way. He put his absolute all into taking care of us when he was tasked with it. I have many fond memories of him chasing us around the house, taking us to school and tucking us into bed. Unfortunately, to no fault of his own, it was one of the times he was tasked with looking after us that I unfortunately broke my arm when I was 4. I've heard that he felt terrible and incredibly responsible for this when he told Mum. But strangely, my recollection doesn't have Grandad as the one putting grass all over the trampoline and having little Charlotte try it out first. When I was on the mend from this, I remember Grandad squatting behind the couch and peeping my toys up over the side for me to grab with my working arm, keeping me entertained as long as I wanted. And this is probably my earliest memory. As I got older, unfortunately, my lack of coordination tested him on another significant occasion. Grandad was brave enough to volunteer, as he's done for pretty much everyone else, as my driving instructor. I swiftly rode off Drew's car by putting it straight into a telegraph pole with Grandad in the front seat. He hardly batted an eye. He just got up and said, "It's all right, pet, it's all right," and got me out of the car, and he never made me feel bad or stupid and continued to get into cars with me behind the wheel. There are so many things that he taught me in the years I was lucky enough to spend with him. Grandad was incredibly kind, nurturing, patient, and encouraging, and always put his family first. He taught me to never take anything for granted, to save your pennies for a rainy day whenever you can. He showed me how to take care of the ones you love, and in doing so, showed me qualities to search for in a companion, as well as how to be the best companion you can be. He taught me the importance of education and valued mine so much. He even read my honours thesis, helped to get it bound for me, and came to give it to me at my graduation earlier this year. Despite his health concerns at that point, he showed up with a smile on his face and better dressed than anybody else at the ceremony. He taught me the importance of stoicism, but also the importance of letting those who love care for you when they need to. I'm incredibly grateful for my time that I've had with Grandad and all he's taught me. And I know in trying times, it'll be his lessons that I come back to for guidance for the rest of my life.
I've forgotten people's birthdays. I've forgotten due dates for assignments. I've even forgotten the directions to this very chapel. Just ask my mum. However, something I have never forgotten. 7 times 3 equals 21. Much like this simple equation, Grandad has taught me many things. I'm thankful that the earlier years of my life had me so involved with him. As I think of my earliest days, Grandad would fascinate me with old black and white television, such as Shirley Temple and the Little Rascals. He would play with me outside, and he would read to me often. As Grandad would watch me grow, he'd then learn to educate me for life, helping me improve in areas I was weak on in school. This mostly majored in math, having me walk laps of his garden and recite my times tables. This was usually with a stomach full of carrot sticks and freshly squeezed orange juice, one of Grandad's signature combinations that I consumed for many years. He would still fascinate me with television as a reward, except now we could both enjoy it together, watching things such as James Bond and Indiana Jones. Moving on to my adolescent years, Grandad could see that academia wasn't exactly my strong suit, nor my passion. Suddenly woodwork and music were my favourite subjects, and I'd much rather show Grandad my latest woodwork invention or play him my latest repertoire, despite having him force me to practice, all of which he was still grateful for. This just showed Grandad's ongoing love and passion for education and watching people grow before him. Education continued outside of schoolwork also, as Grandad was responsible for many of the hours in my driving logbook and countless drives around Newcastle with many tips and reassurances from the passenger seat. Years went by, and as I progressed through Agricultural College in Victoria, Grandad would keep in touch and be once again interested in what I was learning about. Having an agricultural background of his own, he would read my reports and even follow livestock markets.
just to be involved in the things I was studying. Granddad even bound my final case study before I had graduated, not because it was the best, just because he was so proud. Albert Einstein, a favourite of his, apparently once said, "Only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile." Although Granddad never said so, I'm sure he would agree that this quote would go up there with the theory of relativity as one that is just as useful to humankind to this very day. That is how Granddad lived his life. That is the legacy he left behind to all who knew him. Above all, Granddad always taught me to be humble. He would have me wash dishes in the sink with hot soapy water, despite there being a fully functional dishwasher right next to me. He'd tell me to look up something in the encyclopedia, even though the internet is right there on the same desk I'm reading from. He'd teach me you should do for others with the goodness of your heart and expect nothing back. Except with that lesson, he never mentioned how rewarding it could truly be. Your legacy will carry on with everyone, Granddad, everyone you've left behind. Your lessons and love will favour us in whatever we may face from here onwards. I am sure of this, as sure as I am that 7 times 3 equals 21. All because of you. Thank you, Granddad.
Wonderful tributes from each of you. Well, we're going to give you a little pause from the talking and give you a trip down memory lane. Photographs gathered up over 91 years. These are the ones that family love, the photographs that make them smile and make them proud.
Tooraloo-raloo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-raloo-ra. Hush, now don't you cry. Tooraloo-raloo-ra. Tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-ra-loo-ra. That's an Irish lullaby. Over in Killarney, many years ago, my mother sang a song to me in tones so sweet and low. Just a simple little ditty in her good old Irish way, and I'd give the world if I could hear that song of hers today. Tooraloo-raloo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-raloo-ra. Hush, now don't you cry. Tooraloo-raloo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-raloo-ra. That's an Irish lullaby.
Blow me a kiss from across the room. Say I look nice when I'm not. Touch my hair as you pass my chair. Little things mean a lot. Give me your arm as we cross the street. Call me at 6 on the dot. A line a day when you're far away. Little things mean a lot. Don't have to buy me diamonds and pearls, champagne, sables, or such. I never cared much for diamonds and pearls, 'cause honestly, honey, they just cost money. Give me your hand when I've lost the way. Give me your shoulder to cry on, whether the day is bright or gray. Give me your heart to rely on. Send me the warmth of a secret smile to show me you haven't forgot. For always and ever, now and forever, little things mean a lot. Shoulder to cry on, whether the day is bright or gray. Give me your heart to rely on. Send me the warmth of a secret smile to show me you haven't forgot. That always and ever, now and forever, little things mean a
They're wonderful photographs of a wonderful life. Well, he was an amazing man, a remarkable man. He was loyal and curious, humble, the epitome of a gentleman. Other people always came first, and he had a strong sense of a commitment to his family. He was a teacher. In all aspects of his life, he was a teacher, not just at school, but for family, friends, and those lives he has touched. He could talk to you about anything. What I encourage you all is to stay a little longer today. Join his family just out in our function room. I'm not going to say any more because it's all been said, and our service has gone very long today. Teachers, always. But if you can stay, please join family out there. They would just love to hear your stories and your memories and share in how their dad and their granddad was part of your life. Come and find his sisters and tell them a story about their brother, because every story, every memory is important. I was sitting there watching the photographs and thinking of a poem to conclude the service, and funnily enough, I can do Clancy of the Overflow by heart, but that's quite long. And I thought today, actually, I wanted just to share these few words by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's titled, What is Success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, and to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know that one life breathed easier because you lived here. This is to have succeeded. The life of Lyall Abell was a roaring success. As a final way to honour him, and as we close our service here, could I ask, if you're able, would you all please stand? And those who aren't able, but if you're able, ABELL, do that as well. Sorry. I let the joke about Judy being armless go. I didn't do that one, so I did this one. Lyall Abell, in love and respect, we have remembered your life, recalled the person you have been. In this final act, in sorrow but without fear, your character and personality we commit to our memories. Your love and your friendship we commit to our hearts. And your body we commit to its natural end. We are so grateful for the life that Lyall has lived and for all that his life meant to those he loved and those who loved him. We now leave him in peace, and with love and respect we bid him goodbye, but only until you see him once more.
Story, do uncle please? Why are you single? Why live alone? Have you no babies? Have you no home? I had a sweetheart years ago. Where she is now, pet, you will soon know. List to the story, I'll tell it all. I believed her faithless after the ball. After the ball is over, after the break of dawn, after the dance is leaving, after the stars are gone, many a heart is aching. If you could read them all, many the hopes that have vanished after the ball. Bright lights were flashing in the grand ballroom, softly
kissing my sweetheart as lovers can. Down fell the glass pet